Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard the Wright Flyer. Today's solo flight special is being captained by Randy Wright. Ground traffic control has moved us to the departure lane, and we will be taking off shortly. Please return all seat backs to their original position, and ensure that all tray tables are stowed in the locked and upright position. Now fasten your seat belts. Kick back, relax, and enjoy the show as we soar above the friendly airwaves in comfort and style. Once again, we thank you for choosing to fly the Wright Flyer.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard the Wright Flyer. This is your captain speaking, and I would like to take this opportunity to personally welcome you to this solo flight special edition of our state-of-the-art radio program. We know you have a choice when it comes to your radio listening pleasure, and would like to thank you for choosing to fly the Wright Flyer. What's more, we are confident that no other radio program or venue will fly you over the friendly airwaves in as much comfort and style, nor leave you with an indelible yet pure sense of enlightenment quite like we can here at the Wright Flyer. Now that you're aboard, please be seated, fasten your seat belts, kick back, relax, and enjoy the show. We've taxied to the departure lane and are awaiting takeoff clearance from air traffic control. While they go through that mindless, bureaucratic red tape and regimentation, I'm going to go ahead and delve into the pre-flight checklist because there is a lot of news and information to get to before I may indulge you with your in-flight entertainment. Well, folks, it happened last night, the third nationally televised Democratic National Committee presidential candidate debate. And boy, was it just more of the same tired, utopian socialist drivel that we've all come to know and expect from the Democrats. These utopian socialists once again went out onto that stage and showed that they were diametrically opposed to the natural law tenets that underpin our shared United States Constitution and thereby our fundamental and unalienable rights. But this has just become par for the course with respect to the Democrat Party. They obviously don't care about the will or consent of the American people, and that would explain why Pat Caddell put out that piece with Breitbart the other day in which he said that the United States of America is closer to revolution today than at any other time in living memory. So let's go ahead and delve in a little bit to what was said during last night's Democrat candidate debate. We know that there were only 3 candidates on the side of the Democrats, and those 3 candidates who appeared at St. Anselm College in New Hampshire were Hillary Clinton, Bernie Sanders, and Martin O'Malley. These 3 stooges represent the best that the Democrat Party can offer, and they are all hardline utopian socialist followers. They are ardent supporters of the Karl Marxist-style doctrine that is just absolute and complete lunacy. It has no place in a modern and free society, but as always, they doubled down on it. We also saw that the moderators for ABC News were Martha Raddatz and David Muir, and we see that Clinton starts off with saying she says that the American president has to keep both our families safe and to make the economy grow in a way that helps everyone, not just those on top. So you see, once again, they just immediately start off with this nonsense of class warfare, further trying to divide and thereby conquer the ultimate wielders of sovereignty in this country, we the people. And, of course, she then goes on to say that she has a strategy to combat and defeat ISIS without getting us involved in another ground war. What, does she believe in pixie fairies and magic dust? You see, once again, the Democrats are doubling down on this erroneous notion of strategic air campaigns being able to win a war. There has not once in the history of air combat, which stretches back 1 century now, been a true case where strategic bombing could actually win a campaign. And part of the primary reason for that is there is no way to hold on to territory. No matter what these utopian socialists try to say, the rules of engagement of war never change. Somebody has got to hold the turf. It's a deadly game of, basically, capture the flag. I hate to say it that way, but that's really what it is, especially when you get into the medieval mindset of these Islamo-fascist barbarians like ISIS. And therefore, once again, we see that the Democrats, especially Madam Clinton here, are off in la-la land. They're not paying attention to the rules on the ground. And, by the way, she didn't mention how her failed policies as during her tenure as Secretary of the State actually exposed the United States of America and her people to greater danger. It was during her tenure that Tashfeen Malik was able to get into this country, and again, it was under her tenure that they failed to ask Tashfeen about her activities, and they failed to notice that she had placed a false address that a simple Google search would have found to be an inaccurate address on her K-visa application. But again, I don't believe you will ever hear the Democrats actually address this problem, or any problem of real consequence facing the American people as I speak. That's just more of the same. And that's why I said that this debate would be nothing other than more than the same tired utopian socialist drivel that we always hear spewing from the mouths of these so-called Democratic candidates. Then Hillary went on to state that she was very clear that we have a distinct difference between those of us on the stage that night and all of their Republican counterparts. And she said that it was from her perspective that we have to prevent the Republicans from rolling back the progress that we've made. What progress might that be? The only progress that I've seen made during this Obama regime is the tearing apart of our United States Constitution, the further divorce of the bureaucracies and various government agencies from the foundational documents that outline, define, and mandate the proper scope and application of government in this country. You see, once again, it shows that they have a twisted view, that their machinations are diametrically opposed to the wants, wills, desires, hopes, and aspirations of the decent, hard-working American citizen who is the ultimate wielder of sovereignty in this country. But we all knew that this was going to be the result of this debate, and it's absolutely staggering that they are going to double down on this radical and extremist left-wing ideology that has done nothing but expose Americans to greater danger, further weaken our hegemonic position in the global theater, and to leave this country in domestic chaos, such as what we saw in the immediate aftermath of the Freddie Gray case. We see that there is this intentional strife. And when I say intentional strife, I mean that the political powers that be, those elitists who have done everything to separate themselves from the decent, hard-working American citizens, have purposefully encouraged the strife and division that is plaguing the United States right now. They are the ones that encouraged these students at the Million Man marches, or the Million Student Marches, as they are calling it now. It's just par for the course for the Democrats that the only time that they can feel successful, or feel comfortable, or feel as though they are making progress, to steal Madam Clinton's turn of phrase there, is when there is plight and misery running rampant in the United States. Again, folks, we see that the Democrats are not out for the American people. They are out for their own political aggrandizement and the illicit amassing of power at the expense of we the people, which is also diametrically opposed to the foundational vision that our founding fathers had for this country over 2 centuries ago. So, she then goes to point as to the progress they've made, such as saying that the Republicans will repeal the Affordable Care Act, not improve it. Well, I guess it depends on which wing of the detente, or not of the detente, but of which wing of the gutless opposition party, that being the detente wing, would actually roll back Obamacare. We can see from that disastrous Paul Ryan bill that they've done everything in their power to capitulate and collaborate with the Obama regime, thereby ensuring that Obamacare remains the law of the land, with its tentacles reaching into the societal fabric of the United States. But I have to pause there. It's not that Obamacare is actually the law of the land. It is just perceived as such. But when you actually go back to the four corners of our shared United States Constitution, you will find that it was an improper legislative act, because it was not really debated. It was not really pushed through in a true fashion, and it had too much impetus from the executive branch. Once again, Barack Obama had forgotten that he is no longer in the legislative branch of government, and that he's in fact in the executive branch, and the way that Nancy Pelosi went before the cameras of the salivating mainstream media and said that we had to pass the bill in order to know what was in it, that in and of itself goes against the open and obvious type of legislative process and procedure as laid out and established in Article 1, Section 8. Remember, the way that our federal government works is that it has to trace back any and all governmental authority back to a power which is specifically enumerated to the government via the four corners of our shared Constitution. But there is a lot of question about what had happened with the so-called Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act, otherwise colloquially known as Obamacare. When you stop and think about it, it was an attempt to tax people for no other reason than existing. That in and of itself is violative of not only the spirit, but the clear black-letter law of the United States Constitution, which, as per Article 6, Clause 2, is the supreme law of the land. So, once again, we can see from Madam Clinton's own words that this is the type of thing that they consider progress. Again, it just clearly delineates the fact that the Democrat Party is directly hostile to the American people and to the original framework of our representative republic. Again, they want to tear down this notion that we have the longest contiguous running constitutional document in world history, showing that our founding fathers had devised the most stable, the most free, the most open, and the most honest type of governmental system ever devised by the hands of man. But that doesn't matter. And she said that the super wealthy are the only ones that are going to benefit. Yet if you actually look at what has happened with the Obama regime, the so-called super wealthy, those that nuzzle up to the Democrats, people like all of your Hollywood elite actors, people like Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, they're all solidly Democrats. So once again, this is all a bunch of political kabuki theater where the Democrat candidates are trying to pull the wool over the eyes of the American people. That's part of their whole plank. And I almost want to claim that this is a secret plank, because it had been in years past, where the Democrats don't want to come out and actually say that they loathe and despise the voters, that they actually consider the American people to be dumb backwaters people who are incapable of being responsible for themselves, for thinking for themselves, and for taking whatever steps are necessary to ensure their health and well-being. Again, they think that we are nothing more than toddlers that are manipulative, or that they can easily manipulate, and that's exactly how they want to push forward with this. And the reason I say that it's not a secret thing anymore is I'm sure you all remember that Gruber fellow who came out who said that the American voter is so stupid that all you have to do is wink, nudge, and lie to them, and they will grow fat, dumb, happy, and complacent, just allowing this stuff to go forward, irrespective of the detrimental harm that it's going to have to the societal fabric of our representative Republican form of government. Well, that's what we are seeing. And see, she also says that people on the no-fly list could buy guns, and once again, they want to double down on that. But remember that the Second Amendment right is considered a fundamental and unalienable right. That means that that right was endowed to us by our Creator, and that no rightful or legitimate government has the authority to take that away without first going through a judicial process, thereby providing the accused with due process under the law. I mean, that is so important that it's found in both the Fifth Amendment and 14th Amendments to the United States Constitution. But again, this just escapes the Democrats because they don't care about that. It's all about illicitly amassing power for themselves at the expense of the true ultimate wielders of sovereignty in this country, we the people. Again, this is why Jeremy and I have so frequently reiterated on past episodes of the Wright Flyer that the most important service that we can render to you, our cherished listening passengers and audience, is to provide you with the tools so that you can strengthen and develop a fluent and working knowledge and understanding of our shared United States Constitution, and thereby your fundamental and unalienable rights. Because in so doing, then we see that statements like this, where they would continue to let people who are on the no-fly list buy guns. Well, if they really want to make it to be where they don't want people on the no-fly list to buy guns, then they need to provide due process. They need to make it be something supported by probable cause. They need to have it go through the proper constitutional scope and application. But you see, folks, what they do is they play a lot of lip service to differing things, and it really just shows that they're not serious about this, that the only thing that they're serious about is doing whatever they can to hurt the honest, decent, hard-working American citizens. They talk about caring about the middle class, then why are they the ones that are doing everything in their power to put in these draconian, overzealous regulations that strangles the lifeblood out of small business, which forms the spine and backbone of the United States economy? Why is it that they are the ones that want to sit there and deprive American citizens the ability to defend themselves, as is guaranteed by their fundamental and unalienable right to keep and bear firearms, while also devoting themselves to flooding this country with so-called Syrian refugees who are not vetted, all of whom, of the 10,000 that they want to bring in by next year, are Sunnis. Remember, Sunni Muslims are the same sect that is part and parcel of ISIS, this group. And I noticed, once again, going back to this game of semantics that the radical and extreme fringes of the left always plays, they're providing this type of legitimacy to ISIS because they keep calling it ISIL or the Levant. And I noticed that Clinton didn't do that here, but you see it with the president, and you'll see it from Martin O'Malley when he speaks. And what this is the Islamic State in the Levant. Well, the Levant is this mythological place. It's like claiming that Aztlan exists, like a lot of the radical Latino groups that want to take back all of the portion of the United States that was once part of Mexico claim. But the whole thing is, it doesn't exist. So when you call this group ISIL, you are actually sitting there giving them credibility. You are legitimizing their claims. You are giving them the strength to double down on the types of Islamo-fascist barbaric attacks that they wish to unleash not only upon the United States, but the entire Western world as a whole. That should give us all a moment of pause. We must all pause and sit back and consider what it is that they are actually exposing us to with respect to this sort of danger, because it's quite clear that these candidates have not stopped to think about it. Now, O'Malley started off by saying that this would be a different sort of debate than what they've had so far. And he said the reason for this is that we have been attacked by jihadi terrorists. I'm actually surprised that there was a candidate up there on the left-wing asylum debate stage willing to admit that yes, Islamo-fascists are out to get us. But he then goes into things of saying we will have to rise to the challenge of ISIL, and we will rise together to the challenges that we face in our economy, but we will only do so if we hold true to the values and freedoms that unite us. Okay, these platitudes sound great. It would really have meaning if he actually, were to abide by it.
And he says that we must never surrender to terrorists, but never surrender our American values to racists. Now, or to fascists, or to pleas of billionaires with big mouths. Now, I'm going to stop it right there, because what the hell does this have anything to do with Tashfeen Malik and the fascists? If he wants to take a look at two of the biggest fascists in this nation, he needs to look to his right and then to his left, because there's Bernie Sanders and then there's Hillary Clinton, and they are surrounding him. And therefore, once again, that shows that they are totally disconnected from reality, that they don't realize that their policy is more akin to the National Socialist German Workers' Party. Remember, that is what the Nazi Party was. And talk about a redistributive program, the Holocaust was nothing more than the worst sort and most vicious and violent redistributive program that this world has ever seen throughout its history. But they don't make that connection. They don't see themselves as that, even though Bernie Sanders has gone out since the beginning of this election cycle and claimed that he is a Democrat socialist, or a democratic socialist. And when he had defined that, he had pointed back to these disastrous Democrat policies of the past, particularly Franklin Delano Roosevelt's New Deal. Talk about a system that prolonged the Great Depression and made America weak and exposed us to the danger of Pearl Harbor. It was certainly FDR's New Deal. He had done everything in his power to radically and fundamentally transform the societal fabric of the United States of America. It's the same type of language, the same verbiage that we see used by this current regime, and it's certainly the same type of logic that we see being spewed at that St. Anselm University debate stage. This whole idea about racism, the only ones that I see harping about racism, and the only ones I see fanning the flame of trying to create a potential race war here in the United States, is the Democrat Party. The same party of the Klan, the same party of keeping people down, the same party that resisted the civil rights movements back in the 1960s, the same party that had a former Grand Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan, Senator KKK Robert Byrd of West Virginia, as one of their highlights, and yet they are the ones continuing to claim that they are the party of egalitarianism and equality, when nothing could be further from the truth. Yet that is the type of propaganda that we see repeated not only by the Democratic Nazi Committee, or DNC, and various educators throughout this country, but also the salivating mainstream media. They are complicit and collaborative in painting forth this type of political lie. I would call it theater, but it's not even good. It's not good theater. And of course, it shows just how far we've fallen from our moral compass and the type of representative Republican system of government as outlined and defined in our shared United States Constitution, when somebody like a Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders can go out and proclaim himself to be a socialist and not have that torpedo, destroy, and absolutely illegitimize his campaign. That shows that the rabid left are frothing at the mouth and see an attempt to double down on their efforts to completely destroy everything that is good and decent about the United States of America. That is their mission statement. That is their plank that was at one time hidden, this party platform of theirs that was at one time a covert thing that has now become totally overt, is out in the open for everyone to see, because they are so comfortable right now, and because the gutless opposition party has been so feckless, weak, and ineffectual and ineffective that they think that they will be able to get away with it. But as long as we breathe, and as long as Jeremy and I continue to fly over the friendly airwaves, providing you with an indelible yet pure sense of enlightenment, we will continue to point the truth out to you. so that you can be empowered with knowledge, because as that old adage goes, knowledge is power. But don't take what I'm telling you right here and right now at face value. Research it for yourself. Make yourself aware. Arm yourself with the sources and resources of knowledge that will empower you to stand up to those who would attempt to encroach upon and infringe your fundamental and unalienable rights. That is the most important thing. That is also the thing that these democratic, socialist, communist, feckless, radical, extreme left-wingers who were gathered on that debate stage last night fear the most. They fear a populace that is educated and able to stand up to them and to say no. You know, that is the greatest power that we, the American people, who are the ultimate wielders of sovereignty in this great representative republic, possess, the ability to stand up to our government and to say no. No, you will no longer infringe upon my fundamental and unalienable rights. No, you will no longer attempt to redefine my government when it is a social contract, because in so doing you are in breach of contract. Therefore, anything you do and attempt to do that is detrimental and harmful to this country, or that is explicitly contrary to the clear and concise language contained within the four corners of our shared United States Constitution, will not be tolerated. That is the power that we, the people of the United States of America, possess, and that is the very power that these sorts of nefarious trolls and troglodytes fear the most. And we have to be able to stand up for them. And also to stand up to them. They are not being truthful. They are not being honest, and they are doing everything in their power to weaken us, to take a position diametrically opposed to us, and to further degrade and decay our standard of living and quality of life. That is their ultimate mission, and they are wholeheartedly dedicated to it. Now we come to Senator Nerdface Boynme Sanders. Boynme came out and said, "I'm running for President of the United States because it's too late for establishment politics and establishment economics. I'm running for president because our economy is rigged, because people are working longer hours for wages, and almost all of new wealth and income being created is going to the top 1%. So, once again, he just instantly, right off the bat, jumps into this fallacious and stupid, totally intellectually disingenuous argument of class warfare. They're doubling down on this. They're doubling down on robbing people and forcing us all into a redistributive system as if that is somehow going to fix all the woes and problems facing the United States of America as I speak to you here today and now. But folks, everywhere you look throughout the annals of history, world history, everywhere that these types of utopian socialist policies and positions have been tried, they have met nothing but abject failure. Now, of course, Bernie Sanders is going to be so arrogant and intellectually disingenuous that he thinks that he's smart enough, that he is more capable than anyone else to pull this off. Maybe if he hits the sauce twice as often, those delusions will become even greater. I'm sure he's already seeing pink elephants rotate around his head, because it's certainly not any type of cognitive ability sparking around his head, because everything he's saying is this insane drivel that has been tried and failed everywhere. Once again, these radical extremist left-wing candidates that were gathered on that debate stage last evening are diametrically opposed to the Constitution. They are completely unwilling to admit that the natural law tenets that underpin our entire representative Republican form of government are timeless and thereby trump everything that they do. And again, it just shows that if anyone is offering the tired, feckless, failed policies of the past, and while trying to tie it up with a bow of being the wave of the future, it's the Democrat Party. They're the ones that are marching these mummies onto the stage that are not offering us any new ideas, any fresh blood, anything that goes back to the Constitution. No, they are just more of the same, more of this tried, tired, and contrite discussion of failed utopian socialist policies that the American people do not want. He then goes on to state that He was or is running for president because we have a campaign finance system which is corrupt, where billionaires are spending hundreds of millions of dollars to buy candidates who will represent their interests rather than the middle class and working families. Again, Bernie, what problem do you have with the First Amendment to the United States Constitution? Yes, I know that it seems that these billionaires can totally manipulate the system. They haven't been able to entirely. We see that all the billionaires that supported El Jefe Jebe Bush haven't been able to really make his campaign meet any success, and the billionaires that are supporting Marxist Dubio Rubio are not really able to make him all that more popular, especially after he stuck his foot in his mouth again about amnesty and his support thereof. You see, he was trying to attack Ted Cruz, saying that Ted Cruz has diametrically changed, or totally changed, his position with respect to amnesty. But the Texas Republican senator has never once supported amnesty. And what Marxist Rubio was attempting to point to was a poison pill amendment that made no mention of legality or legal status of those alien invaders. Instead, it talked about denying them citizenship for a period of 5 years. But you see that the political powers that be, and especially the detente wing of the gutless opposition party, didn't really want that, because they wanted it to be a control of what could be done with voting. You see, the Democrats saw this as a permanent pathway or ticket to have more people voting on their side, to give them whatever they want. And they see this as a permanent base for themselves that will permanently shift and change the political dynamics and framework of the United States of America from this day forward. And yet, Marxist Dubio Rubio fell into that trap like none other. It completely betrayed the electorate and base that had put him into the position of political power that he enjoyed, and that betrayal has not been forgotten by an irate people that see their very way of life and their sovereignty and their national character, heritage, spirit, and identity come under a concentrated, deliberate, and incessant attack. And that is the type of alienation that you are feeling with the American people. That is why the political outsiders are the ones that are rising in strength, power, and ability. And again, the detente wing of the gutless opposition party fails to understand this. They are just beside themselves. They are literally quaking in their boots, unsure of how this has happened, how they could have lost their feel of the pulse of America. Well, they've been losing their feel for the pulse of America for quite some time now, because they have continued to force failed candidates on us like John McCain and Mittens Romney. And I think that this is something that Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders was attempting to tap into when he was speaking about this on that debate stage last evening. Nevertheless, Bernie Sanders is an establishment all unto himself, and he was probably getting himself confused with an establishment that serves hard liquor and spirits that would uplift him to allow him to continue to spew this meaningless drivel that he was before the cameras of the salivating mainstream media last night. It's absolutely disgusting what we see. Then the other thing that the Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders said is that he wants to devise a new foreign policy in which we take on the threat of ISIS, but without getting the United States of America involved in a perpetual war. Well, here's the problem, Mr. Bernie Sanders. You have to realize that these Islamo-fascists have dedicated themselves to the absolute obliteration, annihilation, and destruction of not only the United States of America, but the entire Western world and its civilized philosophies. Therefore, it will be a perpetual war until we are able to actually admit that Islamo-fascism is the real problem, until we are willing to take steps that secure us from these dedicated barbarians who are able to mix in with groups like the so-called Syrian refugees and create utter havoc, chaos, and terror throughout the United States. Again, this shows that there is this absolute, total, and complete disconnect from reality with respect to these so-called candidates for the little people. They don't care about the American citizen, otherwise they wouldn't be for keeping our southern border porous. They aren't for the American people, and Because if they were, they would rethink this idea of flooding our country with so-called Syrian refugees after it has been demonstrably shown, clearly, unquestioningly, that many of those who participated in the worst attacks on French soil since World War II in Paris, those Islamo-fascists, were also gallivanting around as so-called Syrian refugees. We have to take this seriously because lives are at stake. Our liberty and sovereignty and very national identity is at stake. But we don't see that. We don't see that type of concern coming from these utopian socialist candidates gathered on that debate stage last evening. They weren't standing up for the American people. They are just doubling down on their utopian socialist dystopia that will destroy all that is near and dear to all of us with respect to the United States of America. They are doing whatever they can to deprive us of our fundamental and unalienable right to keep and bear firearms, even though we have proof that these people are out to destroy our very ways of life and that they will kill us. So why would you disarm the American people when we know that there is this vicious, barbaric group that has already declared war against the American people and their way of life? It makes absolutely no sense unless you once again remember that these people loathe and despise the American people, because it is we, the people of the United States, who are the ultimate wielders of sovereignty in this country, and they hate that. They think that they are the only ones that are qualified to think for the entire population. That, too, is completely and diametrically opposed to the United States Constitution, to the very system of government that was devised by our founding fathers over 2 centuries ago. And we cannot bow down to those who will, at the drop of a hat or at any whim, move to disarm the American people. Remember what it was that Niccolo Machiavelli, the author of The Prince, said about disarming the people. He said that when you disarm a population, when a prince disarms his people, he dishonors his people. Another thing that Bernie Sanders mentioned is that he wanted to fund a coalition of wealthy Muslim nations to put Muslim troops on the ground to be able to fight this conflict. It's not going to happen. They are not going to move those troops out when they themselves are destabilized. And the whole reason they have been destabilized is the type of leadership from behind that has occurred under this Barack Hussein Obama regime, where he has proactively helped topple stabilizing leaders of the realm and region that then allowed the power vacuum to exist that brought into existence the Islamic State. We have to realize that the failed foreign policies of the radical and extreme fringes of the left, who have completely taken over the Democrat Party, are exposing the United States to greater danger. Remember, it's important to recall that Obama was the one that had relaxed the standards on the K visa. He had ordered that his various governmental bureaucracies and agencies go about doing that because we wanted to instill this politically correct notion that we would not discriminate on these people, that these people had simply been mistreated. And once again, Bernie Sanders, I'm reminded of your disconnect from reality when you sat there and said that it is climate change, this hoax of so-called man-made global warming, that caused the rise of terrorist groups like ISIS. Give me an ever-loving break. All you have to do is look at the type of language that they espouse, the type of Islamic fascism that they embrace. That is what they want to do. They want to create a global Islamic caliphate, this world empire of Islam. Now, if that is not a true theocracy, then I don't know what is. And yet we are going to sit there and say that this is a race. Remember that Martin O'Malley just earlier said that we cannot surrender our values to so-called races that want to keep Muslims out of the country. No, all that Donald Trump had said with respect to that, and granted it may not have been stated in the best form or fashion, was that we needed a temporary moratorium on Islamic immigration until we figure out who is the enemy, who it is that is actually out to try and kill us. Because as it stands right now, we don't know what their intentions are, that they move against us. And that is the problem. Because we already know that they are going to exploit this and use it to their best opportunity and to their advantage in order to reach out and strike terror and fear in the hearts of decent, hard-working American citizens. That is their goal, and they are wholeheartedly devoted to it. Yet people like Senator Bernie Sanders, Hillary Rotten Clinton, and even that Martin Doofus O'Malley standing there at the debate stage last night totally missed that. Totally are disconnected from the fears and concerns that the American people are feeling. And once again, that shows why they are the party of detachment, the party of destruction. That's literally what the Democrats are, because they are the flag bearers for this utopian socialist movement that is diametrically opposed to the natural law tenets that underpin our shared United States Constitution. They are the ones that are proactively moving to attack our way of life and our character and spirit as Americans. And remember, it is also people like Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders and Hillary Rotten Clinton who, once again, are trying to strip down the Confederate flag from the Citadel. All because there was this group of cadets who were doing a Christmas play where, yes, it was a rather poor choice of attire, having pillowcases over their heads to be the ghosts of Christmas past. But you see, once again, the candidates in the radical extreme fringes of the left are doubling down on this cancerous doctrine of political correctness, and they were even struggling to answer questions about the neighbor of Saeed Farouk and Tashfeen Malik, who was afraid to report any suspicious activity that was occurring at the Farouk residence because she was afraid of being labeled a Islamophobe. And Bernie Sanders just brushed this question off and immediately tried to say, well, if you see anybody moving guns around, you should report them. Wrong, Bernie. Wrong. You need to look at the actual heart of the problem here. She was more afraid of a heavy-handed government coming down upon her, labeling her an Islamophobe, thereby denying her employment opportunities, thereby denying her the ability to stay employed or to maintain her quality of life. And that is a major problem. And the reason that it is such a major problem is it shows that these failed policies of the radical and extreme fringes of the left actually has blood on its hands. So therefore, Bernie Sanders, Hillary Rotten Clinton, and Martin Doofus O'Malley, you have blood on your hands. You are partly to blame for this cancerous doctrine of political correctness that has been paralyzing this country, preventing us from doing what is right and keeping our people safe. And yet you are also the ones during that debate who doubled down on this nonsensical notion of attempting to strip decent American citizens who are law-abiding of their fundamental and unalienable right to keep and bear firearms. Why does it always boil down with these elitists and these political powers that be, that they wish to punish decent, hard-working, law-abiding American citizens, the ultimate wielders of sovereignty in this country? Well, that's what it boils down to, folks. It comes to the fact that we, the people, are the ultimate wielders of sovereignty. They are jealous of that, and they are doing everything in their power to strip us from that. And what that goes to show is that they are diametrically opposed to anything that is good and decent about the United States of America. And all you have to do is look at their policy positions to realize that that's exactly what they are about, and that is exactly what they are attempting to front here in the United States of America. They don't care that we are the land of the free. In fact, they want to take away that freedom. They want to fundamentally transform the United States of America. It's not as though they have hidden this. It's not as though they are still trying to hide this fact from the American people. They have gone in front of the cameras of the salivating mainstream media and admitted it multiple times. You know, it reminds me of what Michelle Obama, the First Lady of the United States of America, if we can even call her a lady, went out and said when her husband was first selected as the Democrat nominee back in 2008. She literally stood up and said that for the first time in her life she was proud of her country. Folks, you cannot make this sort of thing up. And it just goes to show how twisted and detached these people are from we, the people of the United States of America. They are out to do whatever is necessary to tear apart this country, to replace us with this utopian socialist nonsense of a nightmare which has no place in a freedom-loving and liberty-loving society such as ours. But that's just par for the course with these people, and it's why this debate was nothing more than the usual drivel that you hear from the radical and extreme fringes of the left, which have completely taken over the Democrat Party in the most successful coup of politics in living memory. It is absolutely staggering to see how this has unfolded, and yet it continues to be a major problem that we face, because they are not going to back down from these radical and extremist left-wing policies and ideology. They are merely going to double down on it. Any time that they feel that there is a threat to their hegemonic power or to the grip of the power that they have illicitly gained for themselves at the expense of the true ultimate wielders of sovereignty, they will double down on their efforts. And we can see this from a major story that is developing with respect to Sam's Club, that is owned by the parent company, who is Walmart. Their black CEO actually went out in front of the cameras of the salivating mainstream media and said that she didn't want to work with white people, and that she would, accept somebody over merit. She would disregard merit and accept somebody based on their race or gender in order to promote this sort of diversity. You see, folks, that's the kind of false claims, and that's the kind of duplicitous, hypocritical thinking that is tearing this country apart. Martin Doofus O'Malley said in his opening that we couldn't surrender our American values to racists, but we already have. Look at the head of Sam's Club. She is espousing this racist ideology. She is attempting to punish particularly white males when it comes to the employment arena just because she doesn't like them. And then the parent company, being Walmart, said they support her 100%. Well, this goes in line with what they did earlier this summer by attempting to, and by actually pulling from their shelves any reference to the Southern Cross battle flag after the terrible shooting of that Emmanuel African Methodist Episcopal Church in Charleston, South Carolina, by that twisted sociopath Dylan Storm Roof. So we see that, yes, there is racism here, and that our country has surrendered to these values, because we can see that the detente wing of the gutless opposition party is certainly not standing up to this radical, ardent, overt racism that we're seeing plaguing this country. We're seeing racism being espoused by people like Loretta Lynch and like the President of the United States of America. So, Martin Doofus O'Malley, if you were really serious about that, and if you really meant what you said, then you would condemn these sorts of things. But you're not going to see that. You're not going to hear that ooze from the lips of these so-called Democratic candidates that are vying for the office of President of the United States, which happens to be the highest office in the land. These people are unequivocally unqualified to wield such power here in the United States, because they are diametrically opposed to the natural law tenets that underpin the Constitution, which absolutely defines and mandates the proper scope and application and function of government. But these people don't believe in the function of government. They believe in continuing to double down on their failed policies. We have seen that their policies are not successful. We've had 2 terms of Barack Hussein Obama to realize that their policies are detrimental and deleterious in all impacts and effects that it has, not only on the country as a whole, but the ultimate wielders of sovereignty, we the people. This is the stark reality that we are facing, and these Democrats are totally disconnected from it. They will double down, triple down and quadruple down on these failed policies because they are so radical that they cannot divorce themselves from these utopian socialist machinations that have no place in any free, modern, or open society. You know, it goes back to this whole thing that the Obama administration said back when Jay Carneyface was the press secretary, when they were saying that the Obama administration is the most transparent presidential administration in all of America's illustrious history. Yet nothing could be further from the truth. They have obfuscated the truth, particularly with respect to Madam Clinton. Madam Clinton kept a private email server. She lied about a video when she knew the truth that was the cause of the Benghazi, Libya attacks, in which Ambassador Chris Stevens, the first American ambassador to be killed in active service to the United States since 1979. And you see, that in and of itself is reflexive of the problem that we're facing here in the United States, because it shows that we are back to the twisted and failed policies of the Carter administration. That's right, we have seen the Carter administration come back from the grave through all of the failed and deleterious policies of this Barack Hussein Obama regime. And all these candidates that were gathered on the stage at St. Anselm College just want to produce more of the same, to expose Americans to more and ever greater danger from the likes of Islamo-fascists because they wholeheartedly embrace this poisonous and cancerous doctrine of political correctness. Well, can we really embrace that and survive as a country? Can we really embrace that and move forward as a country? I believe that the answer is an unequivocal no. If we embrace those policies, we will only be exposed to more of the same, which will put the United States into this death spiral that we have already begun. And we certainly cannot afford to put an establishment or detente member of the gutless opposition party into power. Because if we do that, if we hand the reins of power over to the detente wing of the gutless opposition party, they will continue down the same path that we have seen for the last 7 years, 8 years almost, with this regime. It would just be more of the same, more of this feckless and useless political pandering that has no place in an open and honest society. That is where we are right now. And we do need to overcome this. And that is why Jeremy and I here at the Wright Flyer have actually come out and endorsed Republican Senator Ted Cruz, because he is the only one that is committed to the Constitution. He has been unwavering in that commitment. He has refused to back down from his commitment to our United States Constitution, and that is the sort of leadership that America needs, particularly right now, after we have faced so many years of dejection and belittlement and besmirchment by the hands of these utopian socialists who want nothing more than the complete annihilation and fundamental transformation of our representative Republican form of government. You can see that from the policies that they espouse, from the views that they hold, and from their unwillingness to divorce themselves from their twisted, radical, extremist left-wing ideology that is really harmful and detrimental to the United States of America and her people. That must be exposed to light, to see the light of day so that we all know the truth. And that is exactly what our mission and purpose here at the Wright Flyer is, to provide you with the truth, to provide you with the tools so that you can stand up for yourself. We are attempting to empower you here at the Wright Flyer, and we will never back down from that mission. We will never turn away from it, because we believe it is the most important thing that we can do. That is why we are here, folks, and we are going to continue to do that for you, because an empowered people who are the ultimate wielders of sovereignty in this country is exactly what these wannabe potentates, dictators, tyrants, and despots want, or fear. They loathe us. They don't want us. They want to destroy us. And so we must give them the very thing that they loathe and fear the most, a well-educated and self-accountable population. That is so important, and that is the key to sparking a renaissance here in the United States of America, the likes of which neither the country nor the world has ever seen before. It will make the renaissance that occurred in the immediate aftermath of the medieval period pale in comparison to what we will be able to achieve by once again embracing clear and strict adherence to the natural law tenets that underpin our shared United States Constitution, and thereby proactively protects, safeguards, and promotes our fundamental and unalienable rights. That is what will make the United States of America a great nation once again. That is how we will rekindle the national spirit, character, heritage, and above all, identity of the United States of America. That is what we all yearn for and hunger for, and that is something that we must achieve, but we can only do it by being proactive, to accept the fact that any fundamental and unalienable right must also be couched with a duty of responsibility to proactively maintain and safeguard these fundamental and unalienable rights which have been endowed to us by our Creator. We must also accept the reality that those fundamental and unalienable rights cannot be stripped from us, belittled, or encroached upon by any legitimate, lawful government. That is something that these political potentates, those that currently wield the reins of political power here in the United States of America, don't want you to know. They don't want you to be proactive. They don't want you to take a more active role in maintaining and safeguarding your fundamental and unalienable rights. They want to do whatever is necessary to strip you of those fundamental and unalienable rights, thereby making you more malleable, thereby allowing them to fundamentally transform the United States of America, just as Obama announced that he wanted to back during the campaign of 2008. You know, another funny thing that happened to Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders is that he was called to task by the moderators for his firing of a staff member and filing suit against the DNC after he had somehow illicitly gained access to Clinton information. I find this totally laughable because it shows that it's the same type of politics as usual that you come to know and expect from the Democrat Party, that they lie, cheat, and steal to get their way to the top. Nothing has changed about that aspect of their character, and it just speaks volumes about what they are and who they are, and of course what they stand for. Now, I think it's interesting that they also mentioned that the breach was a ethics violation, as if the Democrat Party has ethics in this modern day and age. The Democrat Party has not had ethics for a long time. They don't have a moral compass. They're just like the detente wing of the gutless opposition party, which also lacks a moral compass. And this is why we see that the country has plunged into the depths of despair and chaos that it has. It is a direct result of this sort of behavior, but Bernie Sanders just came out and sort of apologized. He said that he wanted to give them background. He said that the DNC hired vendors on 2 separate occasions that were breaches in information 2 years ago, or rather 2 months ago, and that his staff found information on their computers from the Clinton campaign. And they asked what was going on. They went to the DNC quietly. The vendors said, "Hey, something is wrong," and that was quietly dealt with. None of the information was looked at. I find that hard to believe. It goes to show that these DNC candidates are lousy liars. But that's all they do. They are perpetual liars. That's the only type of system they know. That is the only way of life they know, and that is why they continue to do so. But we see through it. We see this, and we just have to laugh at it because it shows just how corrupt they are. They are corrupt to the very core, and yet these are the people that want to hold the highest office in the land? It's unimaginable, but that is what we are facing in this country, and these are the few people or these are those types of people that are running for power. And he went on to say that he's looking forward to working with the Clinton camp and other camps to try and prevent future breaches from occurring. Now, that's absolutely funny. And, it just shows that this was, I guess, the DNC's moment, like that which occurred in the 5th nationally televised Republican presidential candidate debate when Donald J. Trump vowed that he would not run as a third-party candidate. This was some moment of showing unity and solidarity with the DNC. But that's exactly what they do. They've always marched lockstep together. Look at how they all voted in unison in support of the so-called Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act. Not one Republican voted for that. That was one of the few instances where the gutless opposition party showed some real character and backbone. Nevertheless, the disastrous bill was allowed to pass, and we are still suffering from the detrimental consequences therefrom. And it's just showing no signs of slowing down, especially after the Paul Ryan omnibus budget came into being. He bowed and capitulated at every available opportunity, thereby collaborating with these utopian socialists who are hell-bent on destroying everything that is great and decent about the United States of America. We have to overcome this, and we have to actually promote an idea that would be good for the country. And of course, we here at the Wright Flyer have been consistent in saying that if we want to bring this country back to greatness, what we need to do is embrace strict adherence to the United States Constitution, to the natural law tenets that underpin it, and to proactively maintain and safeguard the fundamental and unalienable right of the people, and to recognize that those rights are endowed to the people by their Creator, that no legitimate or lawful government could ever take it away. But you're not going to see that from these 3 candidates that were up on that stage. They doubled down on gun control. They once again continued that lie that no, they're really for the Second Amendment, but that these so-called weapons of war and the ready access that the American people have to them help empower the terrorists. An more untrue statement could not actually be made, because when you stop and actually think about the best fundamental and unalienable right which could be utilized by the ultimate wielders of sovereignty in this country to protect themselves, it is absolutely their fundamental and unalienable right to keep and bear firearms. That is the only way that we will ever be able to fully defend ourselves from these radical barbarians. And that is exactly what these Islamofascists are. There is no way to sugarcoat that. There is no way to escape that. That is a harsh, cold fact of reality. But these Democrat candidates, and indeed the detente wing of the gutless opposition party, wants to do nothing more than stick their heads in the sand and continue to believe that we, the American people, are part to blame for this, or that we need to empower nameless, faceless, and ultimately unaccountable bureaucracies to snoop into the daily lives of the American people without a warrant, in direct violation of our Fourth Amendment right and guarantee against unreasonable searches and seizures, as that will somehow keep us safe. But remember, Benjamin Franklin absolutely had it right when he said that those who are willing to give up essential freedom or liberties for a fleeting sense of security deserve neither liberty nor security, and shall surely have neither. That is another aspect of this all that they disregard. They ignore it because it goes against their fundamental ideology, this radical and twisted agenda that they wish to force upon the decent, hard-working American citizens who are absolutely the lifeblood of this great representative republic of ours. Again, why do they double down on this? Why do they refuse to see the truth? It's because they don't care. Ultimately, they are selfish. They are seeking to amass power for themselves, to amass wealth for themselves, at the expense of we the people. I think it's so funny that each of the three supposed candidates who were seeking the highest office in the land started off their entire debate performance last evening by pointing directly to this so-called class warfare, when they are the ones who amass more wealth than you can gain in the private sector these days, when they are the ones that embrace these overzealous regulations which are strangling the lifeblood out of small business in America today. It is harder today to start a business, to run a business, than it has ever been in the history of the United States. And yet they want to double down on taxes when we have the highest corporate income tax rate out of anywhere in the industrialized modern world. You see, that's the sort of information that the salivating mainstream media has been totally and completely derelict in its duty about pointing out. Once again, they are failing to vet these candidates just as they failed to vet Barack Hussein Obama, and it would just be more of the same, exposing America to more of the same of these failed policies, pushing us further down into mediocrity and ultimately into perpetual failure. This is the decision that we, as American citizens, must ultimately make right here and right now. Are we going to continue to double down on the failed policies of the Barack Hussein Obama regime, or are we going to return to strict adherence to the constitutional principles that have propelled this country to such lofty heights of greatness in the past? I believe that that is a no-brainer. The answer is right there in front of us, and the solution has been with us since the very inception of our country over 2 centuries ago. This is not a difficult thing, nor is it a radical thing to realize and embrace this. Irrespective of what those three candidates were attempting to say last night, we are not radical if we wish to uphold the laws of the United States of America. We are not radicals if we remember that the supreme law of the land, as per Article 6, Clause 2, is the United States Constitution and any laws that are made in pursuance thereof. However, any laws which are directly contrary to the clear and concise language contained within the 4 corners of our shared Constitution is invalid. They are absolutely invalid. They have no legal binding on the American people. We are not bound by those laws because those laws are illegitimate. You see, folks, that is not radical. That is the way that a nation that is a nation of laws and not of men must work. That is the way that our founding fathers intended for this country to work. And the natural law tenets that underpin our entire constitutional framework are timeless, meaning that they are just as applicable today as they were when the Constitution was ratified. That is truth. And going off of the principles of Occam, or rather off of the principle of Occam's razor, if there is the simple solution that can work, that is always going to be the right explanation. The simplest explanation will always be the right one. And the simplest explanation as to why this country is not as great as it once was is because we have divorced ourselves and distanced ourselves from the original foundational principles, which are those natural law principles, and the proper scope and application of government as defined, outlined, and mandated in the 4 corners of our shared Constitution. These are the stark realities that you would not see on that debate stage last night. Instead, you see them double down on their attempts to deprive decent, law-abiding citizens of their fundamental and unalienable right to keep and bear firearms. When there's an act of terrorism in this country by Islamo-fascist barbarians who want to destroy our very Western civilization, we see that once again these utopian socialist fanatics double down on their attempts to blame inanimate objects and to go for this allegorical type of thing where it's the guns. They always try and go to the abstract instead of the concrete reality of the stark reality and dangers that are facing the American people. And therefore, if we continue to double down on this cancerous doctrine of political correctness that allowed people like Saeed Farouk and Tashfeen Malik to gain access to this country, to declare their open hostilities and disastrous intentions towards the country, they are empowering them, and it will only empower them to a much greater extent, thereby exposing decent, hard-working American citizens to ever greater danger. That is the threat that we face, and yet these feckless politicians continue to double down on more of the same. It's the same tired drivel that we have heard time and time again, election cycle after election cycle, and what good has it done us as a nation? Seriously, if we sit back and analyze this, what good has this actually done for America and her people? The answer is that it has done us no good, that it has only opened us to further instances of attack, further weakens us on the global theater, and just tries to destroy all that we hold near and dear about this country. And these feckless, utopian, socialist, radical, extremist left-wingers are just going to double down and try to force-feed us more of the same. That is all I saw on that debate stage last night, and it was enough to make my stomach churn. It absolutely churned my stomach, and it should churn the stomach of any decent, hard-working, red-blooded American man or woman. Because when you see what they are doing, they are going to try this continued push to fundamentally transform the United States so that we would wake up one day and not even recognize the country that we live in. And they have already gained so much with respect to that during the 2 terms of Barack Hussein Obama and his disastrous regime. And we have seen that these policies are not showing any signs of relenting. And yet the gutless opposition party, especially the detente wing thereof, are going to continue to turn a blind eye to it. They are going to continue to refuse to stand up for the American people, thereby exposing us to this danger. That is why the people are alienated with the political arena in the United States of America today. And can you really blame them for it? When you see that both parties have become titular heads of and flip sides of the same coin. They are promoting the same thing, which is the illicit amassing and centralization and concentration of power into the hands of a centralized government in direct violation of the natural order of things as defined in the 4 corners of our shared United States Constitution. This open hostility to our shared Constitution, which is the greatest social compact or contract ever penned by the hands of man, yet divinely inspired by Providence itself, is what is wrong. And the way that we would get our country back onto the right path, the way that we would return to prominence here in the United States of America once again, would be to embrace strict adherence to our shared Constitution. Yet you will only hear that from one candidate, and he was not standing on that debate stage last evening, and that candidate is Ted Cruz. That is the candidate who holds the first initial steps that need to be taken to bring us back towards a proper scope and application of government as defined by our shared Constitution. That is a candidate who actually stands up for and defends our fundamental and unalienable rights, unlike Marxist dubious Rubio, unlike John Kasich, unlike El Jefe Jeb Bush, unlike even Carly Fiorina, who has decided to also embrace this cancerous doctrine of political correctness. We are tired of the drivel. We are tired of seeing more of the same feckless failed policies, and that is certainly what I saw on full and glaring display on the St. Anselm College debate stage last evening. These 3 out-of-touch politicians do not speak for the American people, and yet they are vying for the highest office in the land. They are just as disqualified from holding it as El Jefe Jeb Bush, as Marxist dubious Rubio, as also John Kasich. We have to bring sanity back to this country. And sanity is found within the four corners of our shared United States Constitution. There is absolutely a reason why our Constitution is the longest contiguous running governmental document in world history. And that is not some small task, some soft option. That is truly something stellar. It shows that there absolutely is something exceptional about the national character, spirit, heritage, and identity of the American people. Yet, for generations, we have seen both political parties start to position themselves in a way where they are openly hostile to the will and consent of the American people. And we see that this is coming to a breaking point, to a tipping point, that it's about to boil over, especially when you look at what Pat Caddell had mentioned in that Breitbart piece. These are the simple realities that we can no longer ignore. And if we are going to bring this country back, and if we are going to spark that American Renaissance, then we are absolutely going to have to admit the truth and reality that faces this country. And that means that it is not the country that needs a fundamental transformation. It is not our shared United States Constitution and our fundamental and unalienable rights that need to be fundamentally transformed. It is this outlook in government that needs to be fundamentally transformed. It's this diametric opposition to the American people and everything that is good and decent about the United States that needs to be fundamentally transformed. It's this idea that the salivating mainstream media can be the fourth leg of a particular political party that needs to be fundamentally transformed. And the way that we fundamentally transform it is to return to strict adherence to the Constitution of the United States of America. And with that said, it is now time for us to begin our descent. I'm going to go ahead and send the flight attendant back for one last round of alcohol. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, this is your Captain Randy Wright. I want to thank you for choosing to fly the Wright Flyer and invite you to leave comments, posts, and concerns either here on our YouTube page or on our Google Plus page or our Facebook page. And I also invite you to join Jeremy and me the next time we fly over the friendly airwaves, treating you with an indelible sense, yet pure sense of enlightenment, as we always do here on the Wright Flyer. Merry Christmas, ladies and gentlemen. We will see you next time. Take care.